Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to What Do You Say? I'm your host, Frank Termini. If you like what we're doing, please hit the like button. Please. Gosh darn, I keep forgetting all these. We have to
comment.
We have to comment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've actually been getting a ton of comments.
It's showing the interaction. It shows the quality of the dialogue you're having.
I've been getting a ton. Not all of them are good.
Oh, it's okay. But hey, interaction's interaction.
Yeah. No, there has been quite a few interactions on like my reels and stuff like that. And then turn on notifications so we can update you whenever we get some new content.
What sort of, what are like some negative feedback you've gotten? Anything training wise, or is it?
No. I mean, here at the end of the day, like I would welcome comments on training. I mean, I'm either going to agree with you or not. Right. I mean, I don't like to be. I like to really keep an open mind when it comes to training. I try not to be very self-righteous, and that's hard.
Oh, yeah. That's
hard for me to do because, I mean, I have quite a bit of experience, number one. You know, I've been training athletes at Pius since 2020, and so this is my 5th year. We have had one non-contact injury.
Mm.
That's it. And I just feel like what I'm doing is working.
Oh, yeah.
Now, it all depends on what you were rebuking. Some things I will have no part of even listening to it, right? But other things I'd be like, okay, so talk me through this, right? I just don't ever want to be in a situation. How do I want to say this? I don't ever want to be in a situation where you think you can't learn anything. Training is infinite.
First of all, kinesiology is only 150 years old.
Yeah.
Think about that. The science of kinesiology is not even 200 years old.
Yeah. It's like 2 people.
Right.
You know, that's it. It's
Right.
2 people. That's it. You know, so I really, it changes so rapidly. Research is constantly coming out. I'm constantly reading, you know, but there are certain things that I kind of dig my heels in. You know, I had a guy trying to talk me into doing pulling exercises with the hamstrings for the football team. And I just listened to him. I didn't rebuke him, but I'm in the back of my mind. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. Right. You know, and one
noted,
and the coaches were like, why didn't you just say something? I'm like, I don't want to get in an argument. I don't want to get in this pissing contest.
Right.
But I just, you know, I am not training hamstrings concentrically past neutral. Right? So like hamstring curl. I'm not ever doing that with an athlete. Unless it's a jiu-jitsu fighter who says, I have high probabilities of submitting people from the guard.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. All right. You're going to use your hamstring.
Is it because of, do you think it increases the probability of injury non-contact specifically?
I think why train the hamstring to do something that it doesn't do?
Right. So you're looking at it from a true functionality, how have our bodies biomechanically evolved?
The hamstring
right.
does not flex the knee.
Right.
In a football, baseball, basketball, volleyball, you know, it doesn't. So why am I going to train it to flex the knee when that's not what it's going to do?
Smart. I mean, that's how I approach training. I approach it from how have we evolved, and are we adhering to the baseline biomechanical features that our bodies have been designed to adhere to?
Yeah. And so since I've started training, I've you know, kind of said, hey, this is the concept that I am going to adopt. I didn't come up with the concept. Guys way smarter than me came up with it.
100%.
But I've incorporated it into my training, and I'm constantly trying to find new ways to create that mind-body connection, right? So that the athlete can feel what it's like to have the hamstring do what it's supposed to do, you know, and then they can reproduce it, right? So sometimes it's not necessarily a true weakness as much as they just proprioceptively can't feel.
How much do you think that mind-muscle connection is involved from physical training? For example, like how much would you say nutrition plays a part of that?
Mind-body connection?
Yeah.
Or are you talking about injury prevention and pain control?
I'm talking mind-body connection that then leads to the potential for injury prevention.
I can't hear. I would love to hear an argument for nutrition correlated to mind-body connection.
So let's think about what is muscle memory when it's enhanced? Like, what is muscle memory? Correct me if I'm wrong. Muscle memory is going to be essentially, if we're looking from a biochemical or from a physiological standpoint, it's the strengthening and increasing of the myelin sheath surrounding the neurons, correct?
So
if nutrition can influence then that process of the strengthening of the myelin sheath, recovery and all of that, can we correlate neuroplasticity with optimal nutritional intake? And then is that neuroplasticity in correlation?
You could 100% correlate neuroplasticity with diet, nutrition.
And that's my point.
110%.
And so when you have that correlation, you can then look at it from how then can that neuroplasticity relate to the mind-muscle connection itself, with me being able to not only learn and develop it, but sustain and grow it.
Yeah.
So I was just curious if you had ever even consider that in terms of aspects of, because then if you consider that as an important variable, you can emphasize that as a point of contention for an athlete where they think they're sufficient at their training because they're doing the physical part. You can make them realize that the physical training is only half the battle. Another half the battle is
less than that.
We've talked about this last time. 10 to 20% is what we think.
Yeah.
But that's where if an athlete thinks that their performance is based solely off the physical aspect, they're going to neglect that aspect that I know I and many athletes I grew up with neglected, which is the importance of nutritional intake.
Well, and you could look at some of these athletes, and I'd be really curious if we could, get any data on it, but guys who have, multiple injuries in a season, have a tough time staying on the field. They're doing everything they're supposed to do from a training standpoint, right? They're in the gym, they're stretching, they're warming up good, they're exercising, they're doing all the training, everything they're supposed to do. Yet for the love of God, they can't stay healthy. You have to ask yourself, what inflammatory products are you putting into your body?
And how is that decreasing your recovery potential, your overall growth potential? That's the true question that I think we've neglected for so long. And I don't think it's been anything intentional. I think it's because we're on the frontier of really discovering this stuff. Yeah. Kinesiology is only 150 years old. Nutritional science is even younger than that.
Right. Well, here, let me introduce you real quick, because you've been on the podcast before.
Yeah.
Mitch Thompson. So we're entrepreneur, personal trainer, okay? And even cooler, you healed yourself of Crohn's disease by changing your diet.
That's, I think, why I'm so gung-ho on the nutritional side of things.
So you, at one point, weighed how much?
So I started out at 198, 200 pounds, which is where I'm at currently.
What was your percentage of body fat?
I was probably floating around 10%.
Okay.
Between like 9 and 13.
Okay. So 200 pounds, we'll say 12% body fat, which is just ridiculous.
Be conservative. Yeah.
Yeah. That's ridiculous. Okay. And then you start developing horrible stomach pains, like debilitating.
Yep. And bloody diarrhea. I mean, vomiting for days on end, end up getting hospitalized.
How much weight did you lose in how much time?
So I lost about 48 pounds, almost 50 pounds in less than 30 days.
So you basically went from 200 to 150 in a month.
In a month, less than a month.
And basically because anything you ate exacerbated your pain.
And it had to do with, again, the whole inflammatory process in the body and the body rejecting certain nutrients that are just, they're inflammatory in terms of the response that the body has. And it's not everybody's body. I mean, it's specific to individuals.
Well,
but
hold on. We can make an argument, I think,
that the gluten, protein, and gliadine is good for nobody. I agree.
No one.
You're right.
And
I agree.
You will feel better if you stop eating that shit.
Agreed.
Now, are they going to have your symptoms? No.
Right.
No.
And that's where I don't want to be hyperbolic or extreme in my diagnosing other people's potential remedies and fixing their health, even if they're not as, or didn't get as sick as I got, or are debilitated with the same sort of diseases. Because anybody with IBD, inflammatory bowel disease, I had Crohn's disease. So if you have Crohn's, celiac, which my fiance has celiac, if you have ulcerative colitis, I mean, I mean, Hashimoto's disease and a bunch of other diseases are also considered immune disorders. Rheumatoid arthritis, that's another immune disorder that we don't think about as being an inflammatory disorder, but itis,
It's an autoimmune disease.
Yeah, arthritis. The itis is always going to be inflammation. Right. So if we can simplify things from that perspective, no different in terms of diagnosing it, in terms of actually remedying it, you can get to a point where you actually remove yourself from having to face the debilitating repercussions of those diseases. And for me, it was just fixing my diet.
Which your diet, unfortunately for you, is incredibly rigid.
Super strict, yeah. I'm a little more free now, especially now that I'm confident I'm in remission. So I've been able to experiment with, I had some donuts the other day just to see how they would react. And I had severe bloating and I was on the toilet for a little bit.
Here, you know what? I did the same thing. Michelle brought home some donuts for the kids, and I bet you I went by that box of donuts 4 times. 4 times. And I would open it up,
close it,
then close it. And then I'd go back, open it up, and then I'd grab one, smell it, put it down, go. And they were talking to me.
I swear.
They were talking to me. And so I bet once I started eating them, I'm like, fuck it, let's get some milk and just put the quarter in, let's play the game. Right? You know, you're not going to put the quarter in and walk away from the pinball machine.
And see, the beautiful part though is you're able to experiment with that now in a healthier version of yourself where it's not as debilitating afterwards.
But the next day I woke up, I'm in the gym, I'm like,
feeling it for sure.
My shoulder, my elbow, my neck, everything's achy and sore. And I'm like, what the hell's the matter with me? And Michelle's like, how many of them donuts you eat the other day? I'm like, I was embarrassed to tell her. I think I definitely lied, but I bet I ate about 4, every bit of it. And one of them was a Long John.
Oh my God. Yeah. Chocolate on any?
No. One of the maple bars.
Oh,
God, it's so good.
The question is, 5 years ago, would you have made that correlation between the inflammatory food and your achiness the next day?
No, never in a million years.
Think about that.
And here's another reason why I don't drink a whole lot.
Same thing.
My booze makes my body hurt.
And why is that?
Sugar.
Exactly.
Even though I only drink tequila, and I don't drink tequila with anything but water.
Well, when the ethanol breaks down in the body and the alcohol actually breaks down in the liver isn't going to know the difference between the byproduct of the alcohol versus fructose or sugar fundamentally. And that's why it's like, even if it's a little bit of, it's still the most pure form of that toxic, we'll just say, component, which is going to be that alcohol that breaks down into an eventual sugar. Yeah. And your body now is going to react way different in terms of your tolerance because you aren't indulging in it, meaning your body's not as used to it, which means it's going to face the actual repercussions because the tolerance isn't as high.
Well, the other thing that happens is I can have 1 or 2 and I'm like, all right, I'm ready to go take a nap.
100%.
I have, no towel. I used to be able to have 4 or 5 drinks and I'm okay.
See, I think I was blessed because I never really indulged in the just like party, just vibe, right? So like even in high school, like being a freshman varsity basketball, sophomore varsity football and basketball player, I was always invited to parties when I was young. So for me, by the time I'm a junior, senior, I was already burnt out. I'm like, this is all it is? It's this over and over again? And so I never personally got the itch of what going out, the nightlife could actually be like. And so for all of my 20s, I think it was a little easier for me to avoid the fear of missing out on that front. Whereas all of my buddies, if they miss one night of going out, it's the end of the world.
I never had the FOMO.
Nice, good.
I never did.
Nice.
But that being said, I did
still had your fair share of.
I raised hell in my 20s.
Had a fair share party.
Yeah.
And see, this is the thing. No different than the Crohn's, Frank. I don't think people have to be super extreme in the way they approach their life, especially if they're aware of the freedom they have within their quote unquote strictness. So if you're going to eat clean, right? It's like avoid breads, avoid grains, avoid certain things, but it doesn't mean you have to avoid all of these bad foods in their totality. It's no different than if I, let's say, wanted to go out and enjoy myself. Going out once every blue moon for me is enjoyable if I understand the implications of my tolerance to that experience.
Right.
And a lot of people just don't even define that tolerance, whether it's the food they eat or the lifestyles they engage in. And if you can just find a healthy balance in those, in a way, you can have your cake and eat it too.
So what's your diet like now?
So I essentially am primarily a whole food animal-based diet. So I eat red meat, steak, ground beef. I eat pretty much a form of red meat every day. I eat eggs now, which I wasn't able to do
You
during
weren't
the
able to
Crohn's.
do that. Yep. All right,
So
that's
now
good.
I'm down like 6 eggs a day, ground beef, but I fast most of the day too. So I don't eat until 2 to 6 p.m. most days. And when I do break fast, it's usually with eggs, ground beef, something that's in whole food animal based.
So I don't eat until 2.
Okay. Yeah.
And then when I eat, it's usually 5 eggs, 5 pieces of bacon.
See, as long as you're breaking fast the right way, I think that's really what matters.
And then that's the crazy thing is that's when I crave, after that meal is when I crave something sweet terribly.
So what do you do to mitigate that sweet tooth?
Just deal with it.
Okay. Yeah, suck it up. Yeah.
Deal with
So
it.
here's one thing you can think about. When you look at what is that hungry feeling, right? We can think about when you're craving the sweet, it's usually a result of your body releasing the hormone ghrelin, which is associated with carbs and sugar, which is what we're all addicted to essentially. We have this hyperghrelin production due to us eating carbs in excess. Whereas when you're eating fat, fat's going to provide the opposite hormone, which is going to be leptin, and leptin's a satiating hormone. And so when you eat a high fat, high protein meal, we'll say for breakfast, if you're not eating enough of it, namely in the fat aspect, you're not satiating your palate enough, which means your body's going to crave what it's used to, which is more times than not going to be that bullshit sugar.
Yeah. Well, I mean, God, I don't know how much more I could eat.
Well, let me ask you, how many eggs are you eating?
5.
How many pieces of bacon?
4 to 5.
To give it in context, I'm eating 6 eggs, I'm eating 10 pieces of bacon, and 5 pieces of sausage.
I'm not eating that. No,
but just food for thought.
Not
That's
even
what
close.
That's
not
what
even close.
But that's what satiates me to where after I don't have that sweet tooth craving because I now couldn't even eat one more piece of meat, one more piece of egg, one more piece of whatever because I'm truly satiated. And that's the problem. More times than not, we're not truly satiated.
Well, I think even in any lifestyle change or we'll call it a diet, people fail because they're not eating enough.
100%.
You know, I had some of these bigger offensive linemen were like, hey, you know, we want you to move better. Let's put you on a diet. And so we'll put them on a diet. And I'm like, are you weighing out your food? And they're like, no. I'm like, I promise you, 100% you are not getting 6 ounces of ground beef.
Guaranteed.
There's no way.
Especially if they're measuring
There's
it out.
no way. You are not getting 6 ounces of ground beef 3 or 4 times a day, having the eggs. I mean, you're not doing it.
No.
There's no way.
And so the question is, how can we make sure they're not malnourished when avoiding certain foods in the face of giving them BS foods for the sake of just nourishing them?
Right.
Like, where's that balance, right? And I think that's the conversation that comes from a place of truly educating yourself on what true nutritional density looks like and what foods provide more nutritional density.
Yeah.
What foods provide bioavailable nutrient density. Like these are there's so much nuance with nutritional science that even nutritionists aren't equipped to really have the convo because the bare minimum understanding to be qualified as a nutritionist is pretty superficial.
Well, here, let me just tell you. Okay. So I have done diets where I was eating really very lean. Turkey, chicken, salmon. Okay. Rice and a vegetable.
Miserable.
Okay. Sucked. Terrible. I did it though, consistently. And body fat dropped to 15%.
Got the goals you were looking for.
It worked.
Right.
Okay. Did this, same thing. It worked. The question is, what has more longevity in it?
What's more sustainable?
Right. What's more sustainable? And when you're taking, if you take the rice out of it, because rice is going to convert.
Literally, immediately. It's high glycemic. Come on, especially if it's white rice.
It's got the glycemic index of a freaking Snickers bar.
Right.
Yeah. And here, that's what other people are like, well, I've been eating fruit. I'm like, you may as well eat candy.
Well, let's not be extreme in that deduction, in that they might as well eat candy if they're placing it in their diet in the same appropriate way. Like, I think you can have fruits in your diet or certain sugars and carbs in your diet. If you're going to have it, you got to appropriately place it in your diet. Like, you can't break fast with it. You can't go to bed with it. So
Right.
essentially use it after a workout, right? There's ways to optimize this stuff.
Right.
But from what you're kind of
Or
talking,
right before a workout,
right
maybe.
before a workout.
'Cause
My
they're
only
shredded.
thing is if you ever eat before a workout, the idea for me from a simplistic standpoint, whenever I'm deducing it to my clients, is if you're putting food in your body, you're now having to prioritize a certain level of metabolism that's taking away from your energy output in the workout itself. So if you eat
Some of that energy's got to go to metabolizing.
it has to. So that's why I'll
And
fast.
that's why I don't ever. I have not ate before a workout in probably 5 years.
I can't because of that fundamental feeling. I feel
Lethargic.
less energy, way lethargic, way more.
Lethargic.
So yeah, I think at the end of the day, when it comes to truly finding something that is sustainable, it boils down to mitigating the dosage is the poison is a big concept that a lot of people think about. And though moderation is something that I don't really agree with, I do think that having the freedom to indulge so long you don't tip the scale past the poisoned dosage, I think that is something that most people can sustain rather than doing something like what I do, which is being super strict and limited to 10 to 20 different food items, which I don't mind it, but I'm not.
You're used to it now.
I'm used to it now. And I'm used to it out of necessity.
Well, right.
Crohn's forced me to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm not even saying it's something I'm proud of, quote unquote, but it's something that I easily live with now, understanding the circumstances of my life. And if you want to lose weight, if you want to lose fat, if you want to get to be the healthiest version of yourself, there's a level of compromise that has to go with those goals in terms of forsaking what you want. It's about what do you need? What do you have to do?
Eat to live, don't live to eat.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Eat to live, don't live to eat.
Yeah.
If you can find food as the medicine, I think it'll be a lot easier to look at it as something that is more holistic rather than something that's just a dopamine hit.
Well, and here, let's think about this. Let's talk about the alkalinity levels in your body.
Oh, yeah.
And how high alkalinity is basically cancer cells can't grow. They can't form.
So that's why no one ever taught us about acidity versus alkalinity levels. No one ever taught us about the balance between what foods are going to do in terms of giving us that homeostatic balance. Because you don't want it too high, you don't want it too low. You don't want it too alkaline, you don't want it too acidic. You got to have it in that right median for your body, for your own epigenetics.
Michelle's grandmother every morning would fry bacon. Fry bacon every morning. Get an onion and chop it up. Pour bacon grease over the onion and eat the onion with bacon. And the woman would salt everything.
Interesting.
Would salt everything. I never saw her drink a glass of water.
Interesting.
But this woman lived to 98 years old and didn't take any medicine.
I mean, think about the people that smoke cigarettes and live to be over 100, right? So there's a level of, that's why I'm telling you about the balance and the sustainability comes from, don't give yourself the excuse of, I'm going to have a cheat meal every day or every Sunday or every Saturday, and I'm going to be regimented in my degeneracy. Don't act like that. You should act more of the, I'll give myself the freedom if the opportunity presents itself.
Right.
And then limit yourself with the willpower to understand where that freedom really extends itself. Is it getting to the point where it's passing the dosage being poisonous? Or are you able to maintain it where it's not as implicating so long you avoid it in its proper dosage for the next time you consume it?
Well, and at the end of the day, the biggest key is to don't let yourself get hungry. That's where I fail.
But how often do people, like, what do you think real hunger feels like? Do you think, when's the last time most people in America experienced real hunger?
I don't even know if we even know what real hunger feels like.
And when you know history, Frank, that's where it almost poisons the innocence that you want to give people in terms of their decision making when making excuses for the bad decisions. I have to eat because I'm hungry. You're hungry? What does that even mean? What do you mean you're hungry? My stomach's growling and they experience barbarigmy. They experience just their stomach moving gas, and they associate that with hunger. They associate the ghrelin in their system releasing the signals to their brain that they really want sugar, but in their mind, that wanting sugar is associated with wanting food, so for them, they're now hungry. It's about understanding the actual signaling that's going on in your body to then make the appropriate decision. And most times when we're hungry, we're really just craving sugar.
That makes sense.
And so that then becomes a conversation of the discipline of recalibrating your perception on when you think you're hungry and need to eat food.
Right. Well, and that's why, like for me initially,
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't go by my stomach. I
Right.
had to literally go by time.
Right.
You know, so here you're supposed to eat. You know, you're fasting. You're eating from 2 o'clock to 8 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. No, 2 to 10,
Right.
and then I would not eat from 10 to 2. And so
That's a 16-hour window.
that's a 6.
Yeah.
So I do 16 off, and I'll eat for 8.
How do you feel on that? Doing that?
Fine.
Right.
And it works for me because by the time I get home from Frankie's practice, it's 8 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
By the time we shower, get him showered, the girls showered, everybody putting, then it's time to eat. It's 9 o'clock,
100%.
right? Then I usually, by the time I'm done eating, it's 9:30. So it works out for
So
me.
for your lifestyle, the way in which you implement the discipline is so suitable that and so manageable that it's your new normal. Is that safe to say?
Sure.
Right. And so imagine then you're dispensing that same, even if it's to a high school kid who needs to avoid sweets and needs to eat more whole food animal sources, right? You would explain to them, no different than what you experienced, you would explain to them the strictness required from base parameters being put in place. Base parameters being put in place give them the lane guiders in their bowling to where they can't really get a gutter ball. They're going to hit a pin of some sort as long as they can have accurately defined protocols in place.
Right.
That's where it goes back to the idea of most people that even think that they're qualified aren't really qualified to really put those parameters in place because they're thinking brown rice is more nutritionally dense than white rice.
It's not. It's a myth.
So like it's little things like that are still being perpetrated though. It's antithetical to what could actually help
all
people.
these dudes, and I say dudes, but the girls too that do these bodybuilding shows.
Oh my goodness.
That's all they do is eat white rice. White rice, cod, the vegetables. That's what
Think
they
about
eat.
it. They're on because they understand the difference of what the white rice is doing in terms of the glycemic index, in terms of how it's going to affect their body and the digestion process. They understand that to such a sufficient degree that they're intentionally choosing one over the other.
And they're eating oatmeal in the morning,
which I don't agree with.
but they do
It's
it.
another combo.
You know, but so they're
High blood sugar spike.
They're taking they're eating all that stuff, and it's they're losing weight. Now here, me personally, like my wife was in S2 the other day. And I'm on the phone with her, and the guy goes, "You ready to do a show?" And and then I'm through the phone. I'm like, "Fuck no!"
Right.
I'm like, "No, you're." And luckily, Michelle has no desire to do a show. But like for me, and this may piss some people off, but I don't really care. I respect the grind. I respect the discipline.
Mm-hmm.
But y'all motherfuckers look like shit when you step on stage. All sunk in,
emaciated.
Like, fucking looks awful.
Mm-hmm.
Looks awful.
Body just super dehydrated. I think though the same grace you would give bodybuilders who decide to indulge in that, I give that same grace to professional athletes outright. Because the way I look at it is it the healthiest to perform the way a professional athlete is intended to not only train but perform? Like, is that healthy longevity wise, long term? Probably not. Is loading your back with let's say 315 plus pounds for a back squat loaded with a belt to give you core stability, is that the best for longevity? Probably not.
No.
But that's definitely needed for performance.
Yeah.
And so the grace you would give a performance athlete, let's say for somebody that is willing to sacrifice some of those things for the sake of their goal in that sport, give them that grace. And so for any bodybuilders, it's the same thing. Is that diet the healthiest, the way that they're carb loading and water loading, and then is any of that really healthy? Probably not. But is it helping them in their sport? It's like, that's where it's like, you're a savage for doing it. It's just not for me.
No.
Yeah.
Well, and I never tell my wife what she can and can't do.
Can't do that. I'm learning the hard way with my fiance.
I don't ever do that. But I did ask her, please don't ever do that. I do not like the way it looks. I like a woman to be voluptuous.
Oh yeah.
I'm talking Marilyn Monroe. Right?
Curvy. Yeah.
Curvy. Go get a fucking cheeseburger, will you? Fuck that cod and rice. I mean, seriously.
And beyond the aesthetic, though, it goes, especially for females, it goes into the realm of truly how bad is it for the body in terms of long term? Like how is it affecting hormones? How is the malnourishment in those phases and the overnourishment really affecting the body in terms of its expectations and its ability to turn things on and turn things off?
Right.
Like all of these things, not only from an aesthetic standpoint, I think you're justified in saying, not only do I wouldn't want my wife to do it from the aesthetic standpoint, but I also wouldn't want her to do it from the health
standpoint.
implication standpoint. Yeah. It's not healthy performing.
3% body fat.
Even me, when I was at 9 to 13%, when I was in that range, I feel better now. I'm probably like 13 to 15 now, but I feel better now than I ever have post Crohn's. And a lot of it has to do with the consistency of me avoiding bad foods and the consistency of being well nourished.
So you're a personal trainer,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't just advise clients on workouts. You advise them on their diet as well. Probably spend more time on the diet.
So starting out as a personal trainer, I would have all my clients do a single consultation where I would essentially have to ask them all these questions to really get an idea of their diet and lifestyle. Because again, you and I have already talked, diet and lifestyle is essentially 80+% of getting healthy. Working out's really only like 10 to 20%. And so when they come in wanting to get healthy through the working out, I knew if I gave even one of those clients more of an emphasis on working out just for the sake of satisfying them to sweat and make them feel like they did something, I would be doing them a disservice because we're only doing 20% of what's really needed to get them healthy. And when I understood that, I started approaching every client, especially if they came in for just fitness. I approached all of them with we need to talk about the most important part, which is your lifestyle and your diet. And so that transitioned me from personal training more into just health consulting, which is what I primarily do now, even though we're opening up a gym in the next couple of weeks, which is going to put me back into the personal training. But the difference is now the personal training is going to be underlined with a more immediate approach to the diet, because I have the book out and everything else. But
here, and I'll tell you this, Michelle's not near as consistent as I am with the exercise. I'm there at least 5 days a week.
But she's more consistent with the food.
She's more consistent with the food.
And look at the difference in terms of the sustainability in the healthy standard.
Yeah.
Like she's able to sustain her physique, able to sustain her energy levels, able to sustain all these things because the most important thing is taken care of, which is the nourishment.
Yeah.
The dietary side of things.
Yeah. And she isn't, but now I will say this, she's probably 99% and I'm probably 89%, a little bit less than 10%
For sure.
Screw up.
Mm-hmm.
But that 10% is a big deal.
I think about 90% of Americans are the American Journal? Was it the American Journal of the College of Cardiologists, I think? In 2023, 93% of Americans based off of a basic standard metabolic panel are considered unhealthy.
Well, but here's the other thing. Like your LDL's over 100 does not mean every doctor's probably going to put you on a statin.
That's a whole nother convo we can talk about. Yeah, agreed.
I do not think you need to be on a statin with your LDL just barely over 100.
But that's where if we took the LDL out and we just measured the other metabolic markers on a basic blood panel, like if we talked about triglycerides, fasting insulin, fasting glucose, if we talked about HDL in ratio with triglycerides, consider LDL, blood pressure. Like if we consider these things, 93% of people fail in terms of being healthy. And so, yeah, they're focusing a lot of the times on the wrong thing. So if somebody has all 5 of those markers, we'll say negative on a test, and their doctor hyperemphasizes on like the LDL, we'll say, I don't think that is doing the patient any true due diligence in terms of getting them to true metabolic health. And that has more to do with us having a misunderstanding of which markers are most important. Like, let me ask you, when's the last time you got a fasted insulin marker tested?
I do it every 3 months.
Okay, savage.
Yeah.
You're above most.
But my cardiologist makes me do.
You got a good cardiologist then.
All that shit.
You got a good cardiologist. Yeah.
I have to do all of it. Well, they figure my dad died of an MI at 64.
Mm.
His dad died at 67, but it was an aortic aneurysm.
Okay.
So, but
as your cardiologist, have you talked to him about LDL at all?
No.
I'd be curious to hear about that convo.
You know what? I have an appointment with her on Friday.
Yeah.
Now I will say this: she was adamantly against the COVID vaccine.
Okay. So she has an open-mindedness to pharmaceuticals not being the end-all be-all.
She wants me off all medication.
That's a good cardiologist.
She wants me off all medication.
So,
I check my blood pressure all the time. Okay. And sometimes I'll check it, a couple hours after I take my medicine. Sometimes I'll check it 12 hours after I take my
Are you
medicine.
hypertensive?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Well, actually, I should say no.
That's
I'm
another
not.
combo we need to have.
I'm
Okay.
not hypertensive. So if I take it after I take my blood pressure medicine within like a 8-hour window, it's probably going to be 110-ish over 70-ish.
Okay. What is it without it? Was it last
Yes.
time?
So the last time I took it with probably about 13 hours after I took my medicine.
Okay.
In the morning, because then I take it again at night.
And what was it?
140 over 90.
Okay. Man, I'm telling you though, like, anyway, that's another combo we can have in terms of naturally getting that down without needing to depend on the hypertension medicine.
Yeah. Yeah. So I take Bistolic, 20 milligrams, losartan, 50 milligrams, spironolactone, 100 milligrams.
Okay.
I take that in the morning. And then at night, I take Bistolic again, losartan again, and then an 81 milligram aspirin.
See, when you're in a situation like that, when I have clients that are in a situation like that, there is no real wiggle room for maintaining discipline in their diet, at least as a metabolic therapeutic. So what I do a lot of the times, and what I think most doctors are starting to come to the realization of, is using specific dietary protocols. We'll say keto, carnivore, paleo, Mediterranean, using specific diets as a metabolic therapeutic to reset their metabolism. And when you're dealing with things like blood pressure issues, high blood sugar, high insulin levels, hyperinsulinemia, like when you're dealing with these sort of variables, more times than not, we can tie it back to the diet and lifestyle. And if you truly wanted to get off the medication, the behaviors have to be in tandem with the desires of achieving that goal.
Yeah.
And that's where for you,
want and desire are very different.
But that's where I tell people all the time, and I have clients ranging from the age of 12 to the age of 65, 70. Children do what they want. Adults do what they have to.
Right.
Children are always going to, I want. Adults say, I don't care what I want. What has to get done?
Right.
And when you approach your own life like that, you approach it less childish-like.
Right.
You approach it with a more mature lens to be able to truly not only set goals, but roadmap them in a way to where you can actually have a higher probability of achieving them.
Yeah.
But
my LDL was 49.
Oh my goodness.
My HDL was 54.
What was your
My
triglycerides?
triglycerides were 87.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
insulin was 70. Excuse me.
fasted?
Yeah.
Okay.
So 70 to 110, I think is normal.
Okay.
So that's what that was.
Yeah, I'm glad you're not really hyper-focused on the LDL side of things, because that is something that has just gotten such a bad rap that I think in the next 10 years we'll really have an understanding of the implications of it.
Well, they fired that one doctor. I got to figure out his name. He was on Joe Rogan. But he was adamantly against utilizing
Statins?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And they fired him because
Yep.
he would tell his patients this.
Right.
But then someone who I think is incredibly intelligent, I'm trying to see if I can pull this up. Someone who I think is incredibly intelligent, Dr. James LaSalle, will make the argument that statins have saved more lives than any other drug on the market.
Well, I think that's where the nuance is in between the two arguments. The nuance is in how statins have saved people who truly aren't willing to make the lifestyle changes that if you're going to say, you know what, I'm going to indulge in this negative behavior, then a statin can actually mitigate the potential outcome that you would otherwise have if you didn't have the statin.
Right.
And that's where the merit for the statin's efficacy does hold jurisprudence in the light of those that advocate for it, that are staunch advocates for it.
Right. Let me get this doctor's name, and
Was it an Indian doctor?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
What was his name?
And
I don't. If he was Pakistani, I feel bad, but he was a.
Maybe it was Pakistan. Let me just.
Well, that's where you just have to be careful on ethnically classifying one or the other.
Asim Malhotra, Dr.
Okay.
Asim Malhotra.
Okay.
And it was a very good podcast, and he was advocating against the use of statins. So
because the question is, what are statins then actually doing, right?
what's the pharmacokinetics?
Right. What is
And I don't know the answer to the question.
The answer is it lowers overall cholesterol, not just LDL.
HDL too, right? But what's the mechanism with which it's doing it?
Ultimately, the mechanism I think is less relevant than the idea of it is overall diminishing your cholesterol levels, and is that itself a good thing? That's the question. Right. Is diminishing cholesterol a good thing?
Well, because what happens if you diminish cholesterol? What else is going to go down?
That's the question. Why is cholesterol? What does cholesterol do, and why is it so important? So
number one, testosterone's going down.
It's a downstream effect from not having enough of the catalyst to a lot of just biochemistry important biochemistry that occurs in the body can only truly start with certain nutrients initiating the process. And LDL itself, not just cholesterol in terms of the same sort of cholesterol esters that would be found in HDL, but LDL itself is truly important for the building and rebuilding of a lot of stuff in the body. And when we neglect that, and then we want to lower all cholesterol because there is an association with LDL, specifically when it's corrupted into its small, dense form, being the catalyst to permeating the arterial wall, leading to atherosclerotic plaque. That is true. But it's not LDL itself.
And I think what the problem is it's probably being prescribed too early. So let's say what's the ratio they look for? Is it LDL to HDL?
They're looking for, your total cholesterol, but the main thing they should consider is HDL to triglycerides. That's what they should consider. But right now they're really doing just LDL HDL ratio.
So there's that ratio, which is I believe like a 3-to-1.
Ish, yeah. I mean, then it's about how are they measuring the standards. Some bioenergeticists, Ben Bickman being one of them, doesn't think a lot of those standards he thinks they're too high.
But then Dr. LaSalle also said it's not so much the presence of the cholesterol, but the size of it.
The quality of the cholesterol.
And so he would recommend a blood test called an IP(a).
Exactly.
And so maybe they should, but here.
No doctor's going to go to that nuance aspect of it, though, because that takes a lot of thinking.
Well, that and, I mean, big pharma, that's what they learned to do. The doctors learned to write a prescription.
They're conditioned.
Right, yes. They're conditioned.
So how do we uncondition?
And honestly, patients are conditioned. I'll tell you right now, if 90% of the patients that go to a doctor and that doctor says, I want you to start eating this, and this, they're going to be like, this fucking guy didn't do anything for me.
Literally,
that's
this guy write me a pill so I know I have the immediacy of what you're saying is going to make me better.
Right.
So the onus is on the patient as well, but I think more than anything, the onus is on the caregiver to truly give care, to truly not only themselves know, but educate the patient on the necessity of not having that instant gratification expectation of a pill fixing it.
Now with blood pressure, I would suggest, maybe you want to medicate them while they're going through the lifestyle change.
For sure.
You don't want them walking around 160 over 110.
Same with Crohn's. If you have Crohn's, go on an immunosuppressant while you're calibrating your lifestyle.
Right.
But measure the weaning off of that therapeutic, we'll say that actual medical therapeutic. Measure how you're weaning off of that in terms of the benefits you're seeing from the lifestyle change.
Right. Right. So as opposed to being and saying, here, I'm just going to be on this medicine in perpetuity.
And that's the nuance though, Frank. How do we get the medical industry to essentially buy into, it's rhetorical almost because they don't benefit having us coach them lifestyle wise.
No, and also big pharma runs the country.
Right. 100%. The medical industrial complex, we'll call it.
Yeah. They run it.
Mm-hmm.
And everything is geared. I mean, look at here. Watch a football game on Sunday, and you tell me what has the most commercials. It's some drug.
Pharmaceuticals. But only us in New Zealand legalize the ability to advertise pharmaceuticals. No other countries in the world allow that. It's the United States and New Zealand. Think about that.
I never knew that.
Only 2 countries in the world can actively promote and advertise pharmaceuticals publicly, especially on TV. And it's the United States and New Zealand. Yeah. And then you wonder why we have such a why the pharmaceutical industry has such a foothold on all things healthcare wise.
Well, and I'll tell you, you could see, like if you watch what that family did with the opiates from 1995 to, I think it was like 2001. In 6 years, what that family, what is the name of the big pharmaceutical that family, they owned the big pharmaceutical company. They were in charge of the launch of OxyContin.
Not familiar.
Oh, it was a huge, I mean, this family turned the opiate industry
Into what it now is.
into $1 billion industry.
That's
you know,
wild.
and they were able to do it by getting the accreditation commission and the joint JCO, what's it stand? Joint Commission of Healthcare. So basically, those are two governing bodies that will audit your hospitals, skilled nursing facilities, assisted living facilities, home health agencies. They
Gotcha.
audit these people. And so what they were able to do was get the Accreditation Commission and JCO to make pain a fifth vital sign.
So they were just anybody that had pain.
Now you have to treat it.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
So it was heart rate, blood pressure, temperature, O2 sat.
And they just threw pain on
And
there.
they throw pain in there. So now when you come in there and they say, okay, well, this is a vital sign. How did you treat it? And then if you didn't treat it, then you would get a tag, right? You would, you know, and so some of them, you're not allowed to admit patients until you establish a plan of correction.
Wow.
And then they got to come back in, review your plan of correction, and then you can start admitting new patients. So what's the easiest way now to treat pain?
Just give them
You write them a script.
Yeah.
You write them a script.
See, and then you think about, 80% of back surgeries and knee surgeries are unnecessary. Think about that. And so then you think about the incentivization of an orthopedic surgeon to not only perform an easy surgery, but they're also incentivized to, and this is the powers that be, the downstream effect of what are you now going to prescribe them? Pain pills.
Have to. Here.
And so
I have had 4 knee surgeries.
Right.
I've had a back surgery.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you right now, these people who think, oh, I'm just going to use marijuana, that is not going to work.
You don't get to the bone.
No.
Unless you got some of that opioid.
You got to have an opioid.
Yeah.
And the only, like, I'm very fortunate because I was on opioids for a long time. Between, I've had
12, right?
10 or 12 orthopedic surgeries.
Right.
You know, but I've had a back, 4 knee.
Man, if you're training with Mitch, I'd have got you right, man.
5 shoulders. 5 shoulders.
Damn, 5 shoulders?
Well, this one I had it replaced.
I remember when you had the coracle brachialis that surgery.
So I had total shoulder replacement.
Okay.
Then they had to go in there and remove scar tissue and do a manipulation under anesthesia. Then it got infected and they had to go in there and take the spacer out. And take the prosthetic out and put a spacer in. Then they had to take the spacer out and replace the shoulder.
Good
and then
Lord.
I tore my left pec.
Oh my goodness. I think that's what I remember.
Yeah,
is you
I tore my left pec, which was easy.
Right.
That was easy. That was a piece of cake. But
and they're gonna write you pills though immediately.
So, but here, from 2018 until 2022, I was on opioids. And I wouldn't say that it gave me a buzz or anything, but I will say when your pain goes away, that shit's euphoric, bro.
That's addictive.
That's right.
Being pain-free.
Yeah, that's addictive. So I remember there were nights where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go to bed tonight and I'm not going to take a pain pill. And then you wake up and you want to peel the pain off the walls, right? And so now what do you got to do? Now you can't take one, you got to take 2.
Tolerance is up.
And so you're sitting there and I'm sitting there in my rocking chair, holding my arm, rocking back and forth. And then all of a sudden that shit kicks in. And you're like,
now I can relax.
Oh, your whole body relaxes. But I must not have that gene, right? Because when the time came and I was like, I couldn't wait to get off this shit.
Right, for sure.
You know, I can't go to the bathroom. I can't sleep.
Right.
I can't do anything. Because you relax and you're chill, but you ain't going to sleep. You'll nod in and out, but you're not getting good sleep.
Quality sleep, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, but you 100% are not getting through. Now, there are people, I've seen people like have total knee replacements and not take any pain pills, but you know what? they look like shit. Their
Right.
outcomes look like shit.
Right.
They couldn't do their therapy.
Right.
You know, their range of motion's bad. I mean, you have to take that stuff.
Right, for sure. And yeah, the working through is, I mean, you even know, we talked about it a little bit last time, the outdating of even physical therapy in terms of like laying somebody on a table versus isolating their limbs versus integrating their body as an entire unit.
Right.
And whenever you force the body to heal as an entire unit, the pain that comes with that, especially when it's something surgery related, yeah, it's almost too much to ask somebody to do unassisted without some sort of medication.
There is a time and place to put someone on a table.
For sure.
The first 6 weeks post-op.
For sure. But the idea is, are you going to diagnose and base the entirety of their recovery off of the isolation of that thing you're rehabilitating?
Right. And if I see a therapist, like when I used to hire therapists, and there's patients are 7-8 weeks post-op, and they're doing a long arc quad or a straight leg raise, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing?
Right.
Well, this is pointless.
Do you guys fix their gait like off rip every time, or is that something that's specific to like certain injuries?
The goal for a knee, let's say a total knee or a total hip, unassisted, undeviated, 0 to 120, 6 weeks post.
Okay. Yeah, and see, the only way to get that successfully is to train the body in a way that isn't them just sitting on a table.
No, you have to get them on their feet.
And we're just now, you even said last time, a lot of that is incentivized by the insurance companies. And so once we can get past a lot of the bureaucratic red tape that's holding the people that want to help people out back, the red tape that's holding them back from being able to actually be effective, like you have to put them on a table. It's like, okay, well, when can we get to a time where we understand the futility of some of these things versus the actual protocols and mechanisms that we put in place that we know works?
Well, and here's the other thing. A lot of these, modalities, insurance companies don't cover them anymore. So that's actually kind of a good thing.
Okay, nice.
Right? Or if they do cover them, it's not a lot of money.
Right, okay.
So, and that's just because they don't fucking work.
Right.
Like, I didn't have an ultrasound machine. I didn't.
Right.
I never had one.
That's wild.
I never had an ultrasound machine.
That's wild.
It's like, I am not sitting here and doing ultrasound.
Right.
It does not work.
Right.
And I'm not doing it.
Right.
Now maybe if I had a tech, and if I had patients that come in and be like, I need some ultrasound, I'd be like,
fine, I guess, but
I don't have one.
Right.
You're gonna, so that's how much I don't believe in ultrasound.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, let me ask you this: how big in recovery is then going back to the nutritional side of things? How emphasized is that in the rehabilitation protocol?
It's never.
How wild is that?
Never.
Hey, we need your body to heal and to de-inflame, and we need to decrease the inflammation, increase the circulation, and increase your overall strength and mobility. But the things that can assist in that, which is going to be your nutritional intake, we're not going to worry about that at all. Yeah. That is what's.
I'll tell you right now.
That's mind-blowing.
There ain't a therapist out there that has a clue about diet.
How wild is that?
And I'll tell you something else. In PT school, it was 3 years. Didn't say a word about diet.
How wild is that?
Didn't say a word about diets.
And
did have to take 2 semesters of pharmacology.
Right.
Because you had to know
what medicines do to what in the body
and how it's going to affect them. You did have to do that, but no clue about.
So you're forced to learn pharmacokinetics, but you're not forced to learn nutrigenomics or nutrikinetics.
Nothing.
Right. How wild is that?
Nothing.
How wild is that? Let's not act like glucose. Let's not act like fatty acids and proteins aren't chemicals in the body. It's where the pharmacokinetics, right, is like, how are we only going to qualify these medicines as something worthy of knowing what's happening in the body? That is wild to me.
No clue.
But it shows you, and it also makes me feel reassured that we don't live in clown world. It makes me feel reassured that there's a reason why so many people are sick and unhealthy. And it's because most people that are in positions of being qualified or seem to be qualified to dispense the actual protocols to make someone healthy, they're not educated or literate on the most important part, which is the food intake.
Well, and let's not just look at it from a physical health. Let's look at it from a mental health. Think about this.
They go directly
What
hand in hand.
country has more people on anti-anxiety and antidepressant medicines than the United States?
I don't think there is any.
And what country probably has the worst diet?
It goes back to what we talked about the first conversation. 95% of your serotonin is produced in your intestines.
Yes.
So if 95% of your serotonin is produced in your intestines.
And what percentage of your immune system is in your intestines?
Right.
Probably more.
I think it's 70+%, depending on which location. If it's
is
the
it only
intestine.
70?
I think it depends on. I'm thinking 70 might be specifically in the small intestine, in the ileum, jejunum, and duodenum. But so yeah, it depends on what part of the intestines, because that's the same thing in terms of serotonin production. Most of it's going to happen in the enterochromaffin cells that are in the small intestine versus the rest of the entire intestinal lining. So when we talk about serotonin being produced in your intestines, the majority of your body's serotonin, 95+%, 60+% of your dopamine is also made in your intestines. Majority of your neurotransmitters are made in your intestines. You wonder if someone's on an SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, shouldn't they do something to affect their serotonin production? And what is the one thing that's going to affect your serotonin production?
Well, your serotonin should go up if you're taking an SSRI, right?
Well, technically, it's really good. What an SSRI is doing is recycling what little serotonin you are producing.
It's preventing reuptake.
It's preventing the reuptake.
Into the
presynaptic
cleft.
Exactly. So as a result
then here's my next question.
Mm-hmm.
What is happening to the postsynaptic cleft?
Right.
Is there down regulation?
See, this is where if instead of even going down the neurochemistry of how to find the conclusion, for most people, if they simplify it, Frank, if they just say, where is serotonin even made in the body? In your intestines. What affects serotonergic production fundamentally? The ability of certain nutrients in your intestines to produce. It's really making sure your intestinal lining is intact enough for the enterochromaffin cells to produce the serotonin outright, which has to do with protein intake, certain nutrient intake, and fundamental nourishment.
So if you look at presynaptic, serotonin is released from the presynaptic cleft. It binds to a receptor on the postsynaptic cleft, and then it's going to produce its effect, right? Improved mood, improved cognition, okay, all these things, right? So now you prevent reuptake into the presynaptic cleft. And serotonin is just sitting there.
The idea is it's essentially a fake feeling of happiness, of mood stability.
Right. But so now what happens? The receptor now downregulates. And so now the serotonin can't bind to this receptor. So now even in the presence of serotonin, you get nothing.
That's why.
So, and then what's one of the side effects of all antidepressants? Fucking depression and suicidal thoughts. And it's like, why would you ever want to take that shit?
And it's because they don't have any other outlet to remedy their serotonergic deficiency.
But here in these psych places,
in their minds,
they know. I mean, I've said this on more than one podcast. Two people I know get checked into inpatient facilities, and the one common denominator is they took all the sugar out of their diet. Because you are not going to tell me that. And I think these psychiatrists, they have to know this.
Well, this is the same medical industrial complex, the same grace you have to give a medical doctor, you've got to give to psychiatrists, because they're not taught any nutritional science in their entire curriculum from the time they are an intro student to the time they get their PhD.
And so what you do is you say, okay, I'm going to see you every 2 weeks. I'm going to give you this SSRI, right? Because we do need to fix you, and they could potentially help. Could.
All these medicines can the immunosuppressants they wanted me to go on, in some instances, are appropriate and necessary.
Yeah.
Is it for the average person? That's the question.
So, but in the meantime, I want you to write down everything you eat or drink for the next 2 weeks.
They don't do that.
And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to look at this now, okay? And then I'm going to tell you, well, let's replace this with this, this with that. Don't just say, take this out.
No.
Give them something to replace it with. Okay. This with this with that. Okay. Right. And then half of that shit, you replace it. And then, okay, I'm going to see you in 2 more weeks. Because you can't just take them off of it. You can, but they got to be mentally ready for that.
I have clients that are on SSRIs that we've weaned them off without me telling to wean them off. They understood that they were feeling better without it when they woke up certain days. They experimented with themselves not taking it. They eventually get to the point where they're talking to their psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist says, I don't think you need to take it anymore.
Right. Right. And then you wean, because you have to wean off of those.
And that's why I never tell my clients if they're on blood pressure medication, if they're on insulin. I have clients that are type 2 diabetic that when I put them on protocols, namely when I use metabolic therapeutics to help them get healthier, I never tell them to stop taking their medicine. I never even mention really when they should dose down or not. I flat out tell them, measure it yourself, and you're in control of your body. Your doctor's not. So
Right.
you make these decisions based off how you're feeling. And through the coaching, which is what the therapists should be doing, through the coaching, you're able to dispense that goal setting and goal achieving.
Yeah. So like my cardiologist, she's like, stay under 2,000 milligrams of sodium a day. Then we can get you off all medications. Well, you know how hard that is. It's impossible to stay under 2,000 milligrams.
If you're eating the right food, it's not.
I mean, what are you going to eat?
Red meat, eggs, and steak.
Okay, but what do you put on your red meat?
I do, but I don't think it's necessary to have to salt them up. It's salt to taste. It's really for people's want, again, going back to the I want. When I was during Crohn's, the first 3 weeks when it was only red meat, salt, and water, it wasn't a lot of salt because I couldn't stand the saltiness of the ground beef. So just in terms of, again, going back to the needs versus wants, if you needed to keep it under 2,000, that's not as hard as you probably thought it was originally if you now had this perceived perception.
So what are you going to season it with?
Nothing.
That's awful, dude.
Want. I get it. That
awful.
goes back to the spoiled 21st century American that, I mean, bro, for most of human history, if your parents or your community only grew potatoes and you wanted steak, it's like, it don't matter what you want. You get potatoes because that's what you have and that's all we get. So we're so spoiled in what we want, we legit take for granted what we need. And if we have to make certain health changes, it really that's what I do with most of my clients. It's conditioning them to get out of the childish mindset of what you want if you have things you have to achieve. Because if you have to get that thing achieved, if you have to get the goal done, what you want could be impeding you actually getting that goal achieved. Think about it as a coach, though.
100%. I
get
it.
But it's just, trust me, it's how often, though, are people standing above Frank, keeping Frank even accountable? Though?
No, I mean, but then you're taking a bite of food and hurry up and drink your water so you can just swallow it.
That was me during Crohn's, though. And it wasn't until I built a standard where if I had to do, like, let's say I was eating too much salt and it started affecting my health, time to decrease the salt. Do what you have to, not what you want to.
So let's talk about the gym.
Heck yeah.
Let's talk about the gym. I'm really fired up about this.
Man, the more I'm finishing my end of things, the more realistic it's becoming, the more excited I get. So I hear you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean.
So you've trained with me. Think about it. So we're opening up a gym, Combat Cardio, Kansas City. It's a high intensity interval training class, only 30 minutes, the best form of aerobic you can get.
Option.
It's an option. Yeah. Well, right now, in terms of what's going to be the immediacy when we open up in the next couple of weeks,
right?
That's what it's for.
Right.
When we scale it, the idea is we'll have the amenities added on.
Right.
But fundamentally, just for Combat Cardio, what it is in its own right, it is a service that gives you the best form of aerobic training that's out there, and it's the most biologically appropriate for your body. Meaning riding a bike and doing an elliptical is not as biomechanically efficient of how your body was designed in terms of doing cardio.
Right.
Even running long distance for the most part isn't the most conducive for how our bodies have evolved for being able to get the best form of cardio.
Sure.
So the question then becomes, what is the best form of aerobic training? And I've noticed through my own anecdotal experiences with all my clients, but it's starting to show with some of the studies that are coming out, that if you can get a heart rate at a certain frame, we'll say
75% of your predicted.
Exactly. If we can get that VO2 max at a certain range, then we can optimally train that as the best form of exercise.
Right.
The question then becomes, which form of training is the most effective at getting you to that range? And boxing, combat training, kickboxing, these are starting to show to be the most effective forms that are also the most biomechanically sound for humans.
Well, and let's also indicate this is not a gym for someone who's trying to go win worlds.
No. This is for the average person who wants to be able to utilize combat training for what it's most effectively used for, which is the best form of aerobic training.
Yeah.
The funnest form of training and the most effective.
And this is for the 46-year-old. That's,
Oh, yeah.
Because I do it.
Right.
And I'm 46. I've had every surgery you can have. And I do it. And you modify it to basically for who you're training.
And think about it. You've experienced it outside. It's not just boxing, though. It's not just kickboxing. We're fixing your biomechanics. We're fixing your posture.
Fixing
your walking.
You're lengthening muscles that are tight. You're strengthening muscles that are weak.
Exactly.
And your goal is to make you feel better overall.
And that's one thing that separates our gym from every other gym.
Increasing circulation.
Increasing circulation while decreasing inflammation.
Yes.
That's the name of the game. And the only way you can do that is by having a good quality form of training. So for us, the combat cardio is the best form of training.
Yes.
Having qualified coaches at the gym, 24/7 access you have to them when you're in the gym. They're in there all day, every day, qualified trainers that can not only fix your base biomechanical issues, posture being the name one, but also being able to educate you on the nutritional side.
Right.
So having that in its totality is a one-stop shop of truly getting healthy, where you have access to a personal trainer every single day at your convenience.
And you also have the option of your traditional gym with the stair steppers, the ellipticals.
That's, again, when you and I scale it to that point, that's where we'll really be able to offer those amenities.
Yeah.
For now, with where we're at for at least the next 6 to 12 months,
it's going to be combat cardio.
Just combat cardio.
Right.
Yeah. And that as its own service is, I mean, think about it. People pay me $80 a session to be able to train with the same sort of service they'd be getting at less than 2 sessions a month.
Well, yeah. So look, people pay me $100 an hour.
Right.
Okay. And they could get the same thing for $100 a month.
Exactly. So for what you're paying, what you would have paid, especially a qualified trainer like you and I, what you would be paying per session, you're essentially paying per month.
Yeah.
And you get access to us anytime at your convenience, no class times, able to just jump into the gym, pop in, start your workout. You're out in less than an hour in just about 30 minutes.
Yeah. By the time you warm up and go, it's probably about 45 minutes.
10 rounds, each round's 3 minutes, not counting the rest time in between, 30 seconds to a minute each.
Yeah.
It's about 37, 40 minutes max.
Yeah.
So
in and out.
In and out, the most convenient form. I mean, competitors of ours have shown aspects of it being, let's just say, effective, and it's an untapped market that deep down everybody shows an interest in when compared to other forms of working out. When it comes to the hot classroom that has ellipticals or rowing machines or like all of these other boutique forms of aerobic training, they're just incomplete in that they don't offer what combat cardio offers. And that's the unique aspect that we approach whenever we're offering that service.
I think that's going to be badass. I mean, you're talking about, you got basketball courts, volleyball courts, combat cardio, weights, cardio, turf room,
Mm-hmm.
all of it.
A true performance center.
It's a performance center.
Mm-hmm.
It is a performance center.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
With amenities that, even if you're interested for the longevity aspect, the amenities that complement the totality of the performance center are for any age, any creed, and beginner, professional, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. And here, like for me, my clients range from 10 to 46,
right,
47 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, and as we open up and it starts to evolve, I anticipate it getting way more diverse.
Oh yeah. I see more than anything us having select populations for each amenity, given what the amenity is offering. Like we're gonna have, especially with like the combat cardio side, we're gonna have so much crossover with the general average person. You know, the Real Housewives of Newmark, we'll call them, in tandem with your professional athletes, with your high school athletes, even. Like you're gonna have the full gambit. Now the question becomes, with other aspects of, like, if we have the basketball training, right? Like how can we get people to benefit from the totality of the amenities that are offered, even if it's not directly, it's cross training, like you talk about with your athletes.
There is not anybody. I wish so badly
cross training
that martial arts was a thing when I was an athlete, because it would make you so much better at everything you do.
All of the stuff you and I have worked on, transverse rotation, right? Being able to get the TVA, the transverse abdominis, more activated and more integrated with your base biomechanics, that in and of itself, if athletes could learn from learning how to throw a punch, it would translate directly over into learning how to throw a football better,
right.
Throwing a baseball
bat.
All of that. Because it's
a golf club.
It's going to be the rotational biomechanics that stem from the very rotational biomechanics in the combat training.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and everyone should be able to cross train. And people, you know, there's all these girls that are like in their, you know, mid 40s, early 50s. Oh, I can't work out with you. And I'm like, you do realize that for 20 years, I rehabbed 90-year-old people who had total hip replacement.
Right.
I can scale the workout to you too. You know, you'll be fine. And I do have a couple of them that will come in. They you know, they're always really nervous, and then they do it and they're like, oh my God, I love this.
Right. They're relieved.
This is great.
Mm-hmm.
This is perfect. And they could always come to me and say, hey, because my big thing is, and this is even with an athlete, look, if you're hurting, we need to figure out why.
Right. We're not going to do anything until we fix that.
If we're doing an exercise and you're hurting, I need to know where and then I'll probably figure out why. My physical therapist brain will probably figure out, oh, my back hurts when I do this exercise. Okay, well, this is probably
right.
Let's fix that. Okay, because I'm someone who is going to say you should have no pain during the workout.
Literally
none.
We talked about this a little bit last time. Are you familiar with the term tensegrity?
No.
See, that to me is wild. When we think about animals, vertebrates, when we think about their biomechanics, what are they really balancing? Like, what is the balance in fitness and movement? It's balancing compression with tension. So if we have compression and tension being balanced, most people think, if we're now looking at the body as, like, let's say a structure, they're thinking it only from the compression standpoint. They're thinking about discs being compressed, joints being compressed, cartilage being compressed.
You need to listen to Joe Hippensteel.
Well, because in the tensegrity aspect, the tension aspect is where a lot of people neglect.
Joe Hippensteel developed a lumbar protocol solely to alleviate tension. He swears up and down,
beautiful,
tension is the cause of chronic back pain.
It is, especially when you know the baseline biomechanics that cause the excessive tension, namely from sitting and other.
So I called Joe Hippensteel.
Okay.
I heard about him. It was Eddie Bravo and Joe Rogan,
and
they're talking about this guy. And so I look him up, and I send in an email, and I tell him my background. I'm a PT. I've had low back pain for this long. I've had epidurals, radio frequency ablation, had a microdiscectomy, and I intermittently have this just terrible back pain, right? Debilitating back pain. He doesn't respond to the email. He calls me. I couldn't believe it. This guy's in San Diego, and he's trained David Goggins. He's trained all kinds of elite athletes, right? And he says, not only do I want to work with you, he said, but I want you to get certified in my course. I have no one in Missouri
Mm.
to treat people the way we treat them. And I said, well, let me talk to my attorney. I said, I have to make sure it's not a conflict of interest because I have a non-compete with Select.
Right.
And he said, well, you don't have to be a physical therapist to do this. He goes, I don't have one physical therapist that's certified that treats people, not one. So there you go. And so I called my attorney, and my attorney looked at what he does and looked at the document. He's like, you're fine. You could do this.
Did you end up doing
this
it?
This isn't physical therapy. Well, it's 9,700.
Ah,
right.
Gotcha.
Which I do want to do it.
Right.
I do want to get certified. I don't have 9,700 laying around. Right
So
now.
what is his protocol really?
So he developed 1, 2, 3, 4, about 9 ranges of motion that he says if you can't meet these range of motion targets, you have too much tension and you're going to have pain, period. What you do is you stretch in these ranges of motion for 2 minutes, static. Lay down when you're done for 1 minute and do nothing. And you do 3 sets of all the ranges of motion daily.
See, I don't know if it, like the stuff I tried to show you, especially from the postural stretches, from correcting the kyphosis and then correcting the anterior pelvic tilt and alleviating the lordosis in the lower back. If you can just fix those 2 things.
Well, that's why basically everything he's doing
is essentially those.
It's taking you out of lumbar lordosis.
So you see how
every single thing he except hip flexor stretches.
Right.
That's it. Every other stretch that you do is putting you into lumbar flexion. And he says it has.
Yeah.
This is his quote. It has to be in lumbar flexion.
To what degree does he implement myofascial releasing?
He does a ton of myofascial release and needling.
So needling, I think, is a little excess. I'm glad that the myofascial release is in there because at the end of the day, if we can look at not just human anatomy, but how did all vertebrates evolve, we can consider that there's really only 2 ways to evolve in terms of your biomechanics. You have what like worms and what non-skeletal soft body insects will do, which is going to be what's known as, I think it's hydrostatic pressure, which they like loosen their muscles and then push off of built fluids in their body to like worm around, move around. So you have hydrostatic pressure, and other animals are able to move around, namely vertebrates, through the balance of tension and compression.
Yeah.
And the problem is almost all of kinesiology for over 150 years has looked at the human body from a more compressive standpoint than of the balance between the 2.
I am going to get certified.
Good.
And I do have a game plan to do it.
Okay, nice.
And my game plan to do it is by Q2 of 2025.
Okay.
I'm going to have it. Now, he wanted me to have it done by this coming up November because he's doing a big thing in Missouri. And
I'll take a look at it.
I mean, he wanted to do it by in November because he's doing something with the I think it's the National Guard in Jeff City, and he wanted me to show up and say, hey, this is who does this in Missouri. This is my representative in Missouri, blah, 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 blah. And problem is with coaching football,
there's no time.
I have no time to do it.
But that's where, we start delegating responsibilities.
You
and I be able to tag team some stuff, figure it out.
But and really at the end of the day, one of us could get certified and teach the other.
Exactly.
And
right now, I'm telling you right now, when you go through that certification course, probably the majority of the information you're going to learn, I've already had to learn to be as qualified as I am to have helped the people that I've helped. Because it's all it is that hip flexion, fixing the anterior pelvic tilt, fixing the kyphosis in the shoulders, fixing the excessive lordotic curve in the neck if they have that nerd neck going on.
And so, like for me, if you told me, you give me $2,500, and I'm just throwing a number out.
Mm-hmm.
I'll see you 10 times, and you'll never have back pain again, or I'll give you your money back. But you have to hit these ranges of motion. If you don't hit the ranges of motion, all bets are off. So you got to do your own due diligence.
Right.
Okay. But I'll do the myofascial with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll even stretch with you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you ain't going to have no more back pain. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm paying it. Anyone who's had debilitating back pain,
Yeah.
like because you can't
do anything.
You can't take a shit.
Can't do anything.
You can't have sex. You can't sit. You can't. Only thing you can do is lay there.
That's all you can do.
That's it. That's literally life changing.
I had a client. This is the whole rationale that I give people. The 4-minute stretch that you and Michelle do every time we train, in 4 minutes a day, in just 4 weeks, I had a client relieve 4 years of lower back pain.
Yeah.
4 minutes a day. And in 4 weeks, he alleviated 4 years of lower back pain.
Yeah.
He wouldn't pay me $2,500 for that, but.
Right. No, I get it. But what I'm saying, like here, this Joe Hippen still charges $500 an hour. Now he lives in San Diego too. So $500 an hour is probably this. That's why I said $250 an hour, which
right.
I wouldn't charge that either.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's not
most people. It's not practical for most people.
Not in Missouri.
100%. It also goes back to the combat cardio stuff though, right? I realize how limited I am in my effectiveness in being able to help my community, let alone help more people than not, when I'm only training one person versus being able to train a whole class of people.
Right. Well, and here's the other thing. You have to take some accountability for your own health and how you feel. Okay?
Given.
So I may not be the right person for everyone. Okay? I'm not the right person for every athlete. And I tell parents this, listen, if you have to talk your kids into coming to me, don't pay me.
Right.
That is not, I am not the trainer for you. I'm not the trainer for you. If you have to talk them into it, if they're not like, hey, let's go see Coach T, don't pay me. You're going to waste your money and your kids are going to be miserable. And at the end of the day, I don't want to train them.
No. No, let's not waste each other's time.
Let's not waste each other's time. There's other people that you can go do that with. I'm not the right guy. They need to be, we got an hour, let's go.
And that's where there's only so much we can always do when prescribing protocols, because the integrity of the client to maintain their due diligence holds priority in terms of their actual gains.
I got to take this. Hold on.
Yep.
What's up, Doc? What's up, brother? How we doing? Perfect. I'm getting ready to go meet him, but I really didn't want to do it before 5, right? So what time are you thinking? I could probably get there by 4:30. Four would be cutting it close because he's going to be in Mass. So, but I can, you want me to just meet you at your house? You tell me what's most convenient for you. You're doing me the favor. I'll be at Cascone's, but yeah. But I could be at school. I could be at the Liberty Clinic. I could be at your house. Tell me what you want me to do. I'll be there as close to 4 as possible. How's that? I'll meet you at North Kansas City on the 6th floor. Bet. I'll be there as close to 4 as possible. All right. Perfect. Okay, Doc. Thank you. All right. Okay. So edit that part out, guys. Anyway, but there's so much to the result that is predicated on how good of a patient you are,
right,
or how good of a client you are, right? So at some point you have to look internally too. Like, and here's my thing. I tell people, I'm not going to guarantee that I'm going to get your child a varsity spot, or, a starting spot on the team. But what I am going to do is make sure that they bring the best version of themselves to the field, the court, the mat, the pool, wherever it is that I will get them to bring the best version of themselves. And that's all I can guarantee you that 100%. I'm going to be able to do. Okay. And really, does it really matter after that?
It's no different than when somebody comes in and says, my energy levels are off, I'm having trouble sleeping, I'm cranky and irritated all the time. And after a few weeks of calibrating their lifestyle, and you ask them, how are your energy levels? How are you sleeping? Are you more stable in your mood, in your mood stabilization? And that's really all they care about.
Well, and here's the thing. There's discipline, desire, and delight. Mm-hmm. You have to initially discipline yourself to train and eat right. Okay. Then you're going to desire to do it. And then you'll have to do it.
It'll be a delight. Yeah, that's a good way. I've never heard
but that's the order of operations.
Yeah, I like
that. And that's
that.
Really everything in your life.
Discipline, desire, delight. I like that.
Right. Because, you can want something all you want. But if you don't desire it, you're not going to discipline yourself.
Right. That's a good point. Point.
So you could want in one hand and shit in the other. You know what I mean?
That's good.
So it's like, what's the difference? But you have to be disciplined. And like so many people come to me, they're like, God, I hate working out. Yes, you will. Discipline yourself to do it 4 days a week for 4 months. Discipline yourself to do it. You can always quit.
Literally.
You can always quit. Discipline yourself for me, you don't have to come to me 4 days a week. That's not feasible for everyone to do that. Now, some people can. They're fortunate enough that they can do that. Some people can't. You know what? Come to me with a purpose. Take notes of what I'm having you do for each body part, and then you can go into the gym and you can do it on your own.
Implement it yourself, yep.
And then once you're comfortable with that, then maybe you're seeing me once a week.
That is why I called my original company Self-Sustained Training, because if you can get them to be self-sustained, they don't technically need you, but they'll usually still reach out for your services because of how much they actually appreciate you.
Well, and not only that, but they're like, here, I've been doing this 20 years and we've already discussed that it's infinite. So they're going to come in and then they're going to say, okay, I've peaked with this program. Let's modify it.
Simple.
Because you as well, you have to switch it up.
Always. I usually do it in 4 weeks for digestible chunks, 8 weeks as an entire unit.
Yeah.
So 8 weeks in 2 4-week chunks, then give them like a deload week, a recalibration week.
Right.
And every 8 weeks, we're able to actually reset a tone and a standard given wherever they're at.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. All right. Thanks for coming on.
Per usual. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I'm excited for the new business venture. You always have me and Michelle. I know for sure you got 4 clients.
Right.
But we're going to see who's better between me and Johnny Cascone.
Yeah.
We got to see who's better. Okay. Because me and him argue back and forth over.
I'm getting him right. I'm getting his hands right.
Over who hits harder. And I say for sure it's me. Although if either one of us got hit by anyone, we'd get knocked the fuck out.
It would suck. Yeah, for sure.
So anyway, thanks a lot, buddy.
Appreciate you having me.